Hello everyone and welcome back to the fourth and final discussion in our four-part live series on transforming education through concept-based learning. I'm Rachel French, the Director of Professional Learning International. I'm a concept-based inquiry workshop leader, coach, best-selling author, and the Director of the Erickson and Lanning CBCI Trainer Certification Institute, and your host for this series. And today we're talking about transforming schools. And we've got three inspiring school leaders from around the world joining us to share their insights and their journeys. So allow me to introduce Juliet van Eerdwyk, who is the head of school at RAK Academy in the United Arab Emirates. Welcome, Juliet, and thank you for joining us today. We also have Reham Kafri Abu Laban, who is the upper school principal at Ramallah Friends School in Palestine. And we have Erin Withoff, who's the Head of Curriculum Development and Research at the United World College, Southeast Asia in Singapore. Juliet, Reham, and Erin are all Erickson and Lanning CBCI certified trainers. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Let's get started.
All right, so the way that we've started all of these conversations is to invite you all to share your own concept-based journey, because those concept-based journeys are significant and there are some similarities that we're seeing across those journeys, but also I think in hearing that it's a journey, it helps others who are on that journey themselves kind of feel a part of that journey and recognize that it's not going to be an overnight transformation. It takes time, it takes connections, it takes learning along the way. So if I can invite each of you to share your journey, it might resonate with some of the people who are listening today. So maybe Juliet, we can start with you, if you'd like to kind of jump in and share a part of your journey.
Great, thank you. Yeah, for me, the concept-based curriculum, really, the journey started when I was working with the IB already when I was in Botswana in 2005. That's when I first started hearing about it, but I never had an opportunity to actually join. And then when I moved to other places, again, I was very interested in finding out more, but I was always in the wrong place at the wrong time, basically. And so when I finally moved to the Netherlands and we as a school were looking for an opportunity to really work as a whole school and considering what kind of inquiry we wanted, what we meant by it, how we were developing that deeper thinking, concept-based curriculum was one of the areas that we looked at, and we decided to join the senior leadership, basically to join the first course just to see if it was right for our school. And that's really where the journey started. And I have to say, I never want to look back at the times before that, because it has absolutely transformed me as a leader. It has transformed the way I look at the curriculum. And for me, it is the only way forward now. So it is a special journey, I think, with the group of people that we had. And for me, it is the only way we can actually now develop curricula around the world.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Isha's been an interesting case study, because I'm now on the fourth cohort of 40 teachers in each cohort who have gone through our 8-week online course. And I think you've now had 3 people who've done the Trainer Certification Institute. You were the first doing it last year, and then 2 more who've done it this year. So it's been a really full commitment to a concept-based curriculum approach. And I really appreciate, as part of that journey, that they have used a cohort approach rather than trying to move everyone at once to that concept-based journey. I think we can talk a little bit more about that as we go on today, but seeing how kind of picking up early implementers, having the school leaders on there early made a really big difference.
Yeah, I think if you want to bring about change, I think that is the only way you can actually make the change happen. And I think that has been one of the strongest parts of for myself as a leader, being very secure and knowing what I wanted to achieve. And the course basically gave me the practical tools to actually do that. So therefore you feel very secure, and yet your role as a leader completely changes, because you actually become more of a mentor. And what I really loved is that it took me away from all the paperwork and actually got me back in the class and actually talking to staff and feeling that you have an impact on the learning within the class setting.
Yeah, I know. And as a lot of the teachers who were in your school came back and were doing the course, I remember saying to them, go and talk to Juliet, she's doing the training. And so you had, although you were working mostly in the primary school last year, you had kind of high school teachers coming to you and saying, help me write this generalization, which I thought was amazing.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Jenny. And Riam, can you share a little bit about your journey?
So my journey started, I came from university education. I was a professor at a university level, and then this opportunity to lead Ramallah Friends Schools at the upper campus presented itself. The Ramallah Friends Schools is an IB World School. So we have the PYP, the MYP, and the DP. And I came into this, fresh off the boat, if you will. I had no idea what MYP is or what DP is. And so I took the first 2 IB workshops so that I can actually just push the programs through. And within the first year, we were going through the first self-study for the MYP program. And so I had to really jump in. And when I was reading the literature on MYP, Dr. Lynn Erickson and Dr. Lois Lanning's names kept coming up. And then I had to look up what is this, because it felt like there was a tip of the iceberg and there was so much more underneath it, and I really wanted to be able to help my teachers. So I found the institute that was at that time being run face-to-face. I have twins, and they were only entering school at that time, so leaving them for 3 weeks was not an option. And so I just, every year I would get the email about the institute, and every year I would put it on my bucket list. I'm going to do this. And so I did a little bit of my own research so I can help the teachers. I took on, although the position is both operational and educational, I lean towards the academics. I love the classroom. So I wanted to really present something that would help the teachers. I could tell that my teachers were thrown into the program without really the tools. And here's a unit plan, but how do you translate that unit plan? What really happens in the classroom? What does it mean to ask a question? All of these inquiries that they had that haven't been answered. So I worked on my own for a while, and then the pandemic hit, and you guys went online. And you thought, there's always a good thing happening, and it has been eye-opening. I've been advocating for a concept-based curriculum, not just at the school. I'm going to be working on a national level with a few science teachers in a training program. And that's kind of opened up what I'm going to do next, because I'm leaving RFS at the end of this academic year. But I think that there's a lot to say about CBCI to Palestinians, in particular to Palestinian teachers. And I just don't see how you can do any kind of teaching without concept-based. I don't understand how anyone would teach content anymore. It's just, I don't see it. I don't want to go back, like Juliet said, I don't want to go back to that time. I get scared. And right now I've been focused with my teachers on what happens in the classroom on a day-to-day basis, because I think what teachers often need isn't they can write a beautiful unit plan and then they'll just depart from that and go back to the traditional lesson plan. So that has been my interest, and I think that will be something that I'll focus on in the future as well.
Mm-hmm,
so here I am.
Yeah, fantastic. It's exciting to hear those new job opportunities coming up and new opportunities to collaborate too as a result of this.
I should say that the Institute had led to many networking and many wonderful connections and partnerships. And one of them is culminating in us a small business idea with a partner of mine, with a colleague of mine from the Institute, Angela Jackson. She's based in England. So we are working on a small project that we will probably launch in the summer. But I cannot tell you, I'm forever grateful for the Institute. It's really changed the way I think of education and how I lead my teachers. And I agree with Juliette, it takes you out of the office and puts you into that mentoring role, which I think that's the best way to do. You know, that's the best way to lead a school, is to be a mentor rather than a supervisor.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. That getting into the classroom, I think, is one of the ways that school leaders get so much respect from teachers.
I want to advocate for student learning, but in order to do that, I have to be a teacher's advocate first. Everything we do is about the student, but if we don't support our teachers and we don't really give them what they need to do what they should be doing in the classroom, then the student isn't going to benefit from all of the, you know, all of the fancy words and all of the fancy unit plans that we write. So
yeah, indeed, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that journey. And Erin, tell us about your journey as a concept-based educator.
Yeah, it's always inspiring to connect with others and hear this. So I'm just enthralled hearing. So this is quite exciting. For my journey, I was in the Middle East and I had been a curriculum coordinator at a K-12 international school. And a coworker of mine happened to just forward an email saying, here's some professional learning, looks good, maybe it's something you're interested in. And it was the Inquiry and Action workshop. But I also saw information about the Institute simultaneous. And I thought, Institute's a lot of money. It's a big commitment. And if I don't agree with this particular approach, that's a huge jump to make. So I thought, let's start small. Let's do the week of Inquiry and Action. It's a smaller, chunk of money to set aside at a time. But if it's good, then I'll sign up for the Institute. And I still have time in the year to do that. So took the plunge, came to Spain, did the Inquiry and Action. And I had been in education at that point for about 10 to 12 years. And I just remember thinking it had probably been at least 6 to 8 years since I attended a high quality professional learning opportunity where I felt like people were genuinely trying to make connections with each other. It wasn't about competition. It was about how can we be in this together? And so that was a huge change or shift from other professional learning, but also the care and attention that was put into delivering it made me feel like, okay, this is something I could invest my time in. And then as the week continued on, I felt like layers of my teaching had just been unpacked of, I've been teaching conceptually, but I had not been asking students to form their own big ideas. So I knew inquiry, I knew curriculum, but I had never put them together like this. And so I just felt like there was aha moments peeled back like onions of a layer or layers of an onion right throughout the week. And so it was just like, oh my goodness, like I can't wait to get back and do this in practice. So I kind of took that, went back, and I worked with several teams within our school on just kind of trying out some things. I would say that they were nowhere near a fully fledged unit planner or completely concept-based at that time, but it was just, that was where I had a practice to kind of get in and work with teams. I was not in the classroom at the time. The school I was at did not allow leaders to do that. So I felt like I didn't have a playground, I guess, to do this. So that was a bit sad. However, at the end of that year, I had enrolled in the Institute and I was going that summer. And so I was really looking forward to just continuing my journey to understand how to do this a bit better. I'd perhaps done this a bit reverse, which I know many people will do these workshops in different orders, but that was my journey into the Institute. And so when I got to the Institute, I felt like, again, I was with a network of teachers that I had a chance to really get to know and build relationships. And then also I felt like I had a chance to have like a safety place to figure out how to do this. Like there was a great feedback given and there were opportunities to figure out, okay, I work with different subject areas, but that's not my specialty. I don't know physics. I won't know econ. But how do I make sure when I am working with teams that I can facilitate that work and know the work that I'm doing will be high quality? So I walked away, I felt from that Institute feeling like, okay, I knew finally how to coach and work with teams, regardless of their developmental continuum, where they are, and just how to talk about this and how to do this work. at that point, I was still in Kuwait, but I was looking to move somewhere else. And Rachel and I happened to have a conversation. Oh, you should apply for the position that's open at UWC, which is where I'm at today. So small world. But now that I've transitioned to Singapore, the school that I'm at currently has written a concept-based curriculum over the last decade. So I have stepped into great legacy from multiple co-workers that have done the Institute and been through it, co-authored with you, Rachel. And so I felt like I've had great mentorship that has taken my journey even further, because I think what it's done is I've been around so many people that have been doing this for so long that they have such nuanced into thinking about how do we do concept-based education with interdisciplinary learning? How do we do this with shared curriculums? What does this mean for students, when they've seen concepts over multiple years? How do we make sure they're still getting depth? And so I feel like where I'm currently at, it's pushed me into a whole new level of professional learning, because this community is behind a school that embraces this. It's part of the mission, and it's completely supported. So I feel like this journey is still evolving. And then I think just other work has come its way as well throughout this process. I know that we've done some work together this year, Rachel, with looking at creating primary concept-based curriculum. And so just writing some units and getting to network with other international teachers to unpack what units might look like in a concept-based math classroom, which is more my content area of expertise. But it's fun for me because I get to be in a different place again to do work that I feel passionate about, in a content area that sometimes struggles with what does this look like in practice. And so I feel like I'm getting to work with other coworkers and really consolidate our practice, our understanding of our practice, and really think about what does this mean for others on this journey, and how can we help them to see it and to embrace it themselves. And that's been a great collaboration as well, I would say, along the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hearing that theme from all of you, that this opens up this opportunity for intellectual thought partners and collaboration, and it's partly what we take back to our own schools, but it's partly also this kind of lifelong network of others that are beyond our school. Because sometimes in our own schools, when you're a leader in your school, you're always the one that people are coming to with questions. And so to actually establish this kind of global network of thought partners who you can put things out to and go, okay, I'm the one that's got the questions now. What about this? Or how do I figure out this? Has been incredibly powerful for me, but I also appreciate, being able to connect with all of you and with all of the other educators who are kind of working on this journey together. So it's been incredibly powerful. So I want to sort of transition now to talking about how concept-based learning has transformed the schools that you're in. So this, again, the schools that you're in now and the schools that you have worked in. What kinds of transformation have you seen within your schools as you've led this approach? Maybe we'll start with you this time, Rhian.
Okay. During last year, during the Institute, I had two young teachers, particularly one in grade 8 who was a science teacher, and one who was an English teacher in grade 7, who needed this kind of support. Both of them were new to the school. Both of them have not really had the training to do MYP the way, they've had the basic workshop, but not the day-to-day runnings of how do I do inquiry. So I said to her, I'm doing this Institute and I'm still exploring this, but do you mind if we write the unit that I have to write for the course together? And if you don't mind, we could co-teach this. So I'd really like to kind of get a feel of what happens in the classroom. And we taught that unit the beginning of the second semester. And we did, we would write, we wrote the full unit with generalizations and everything. And then we would write 2 face-to-face lesson plans and 1 synchronous online lesson plan, and then we would write asynchronous assignments, because the half of the students were at home, the other half was learning in school. And so what I saw was a complete transformation of the teacher. I was just so excited to see her gain control of her classroom. It took her 1 unit where I had to oversee, the whole thing with her, where I was there every step of the way. And then she wrote her 2nd unit on her own. Her lessons changed. The students were saying that science class transformed completely for them. I would attend the online synchronous sessions on Saturdays, and I watched her, make use of all the tools that we were made available on the platform that we were using. And I could tell you that there was, her first time writing a generalization, asking the students to write a generalization, she was very nervous. And we chose to do that online because the kids can do it on Padlet and they can share, and we can, and I this was the best way to engage kids online, because on Saturday, nobody wants to get up for class, but, we thought this would be fun. And she was so nervous, and we planned it meticulously, and she divided the students into the groups and then asked them to write the generalization. And then on Padlet popped up the best generalizations, things we didn't even write. And she kept, she's at home, I'm at home, she's texting me, I can't believe that they are actually doing this. Oh my God. And then after that, it was like, her name was Rinad. And Rinad, would you like me to come to this lesson because you're generalizing? Oh, no, I've got this. And then she would show me. And so independence, agency, and then intellectual stimulation for both the teachers and the students. These are the things that I saw online, in a blended setting, in the least ideal context that we have here.
Yeah, I really appreciate you talking about how, although part of this is bringing concept-based to the students, it's actually empowering teachers as well. Because we talk a lot about how concept-based promotes student agency and student thinking, but the way that it empowers teachers, and like you say, that all of the research supports that when students are engaged, that behavior management piece disappears.
Yeah.
So when students are engaged, and that engagement means thinking and actively making connections and seeing patterns for themselves. So that's such a beautiful story about your teachers who are feeling stronger teachers and more passionate about what they're doing, and that ripple effect that it has for student learning. So thank you. They're beautiful stories to be sharing. Juliet, I'd love to hear from you and from the transformations that you're seeing in your school as you implement a concept-based approach.
Yeah, so I will first talk about the experience that I've had in the Netherlands at the International School of The Hague, because that's really where we started implementing that. The reason we started implementing is because in 2019, we had the CIS accreditation and we had the IPC accreditation as well. And ISH is a school where you have the IPC for primary, and then middle school and high school has the IB diploma. So one of the links that was missing was really working together in the understanding of inquiry. And so that was one of the reasons. But they had also really identified that within the primary, we were doing a fantastic job. I had a really good report, but as expected, we were not really developing that understanding well enough. And so that was the reason why we ended up with the concept-based curriculum ideas. And what was happening was, as I already said, we did the senior leadership training just to see if it would fit. And then we made a very strategic decision that we were going to indeed buy into training 40 staff members who were doing this on a voluntary basis. We were paying for it, but we needed first that, the front runners, the early implementation people who are out there going for it. And we started with them. So when we had that first group, that was really interesting, because very slowly there were questions coming up about how does this work with IPC? Does this fit better with PYP? Should we be switching to PYP? And as we were having these conversations, one of my aha moments was actually when we were looking at the curriculum that we have for IPC, and there we were just discovering there is a lot of understanding written there. It's just not phrased as understanding. So we started unpicking all the parts and all the wonderful things that were in that curriculum and saying, oh, actually, this is a generalization. It's just not written as a generalization. And so we had that first group becoming really enthusiastic. What we then did is we organized an inset day, and we had these teachers recording clips of lessons that they did, and they shared that with the whole school community. And that became such a hit because the kids were having fun, the teacher was having fun, and everybody was watching how much learning and fun they were having in these classrooms. So then when the next 40 took the course within that same year, we were really starting to see a shift already, because when there was planning taking place, the discussions amongst the teachers was starting to shift and finding that understanding and how can we get that into our classroom. So that was a beautiful, beautiful shift. And I think what we did as a leadership was a very good idea, because slowly you start having that critical mass that are getting to the point where you have that shift. If you are not doing the course, you basically started to feel left out, because the other teachers were shifting so much and they were planning and they were coming up with great activities, and the children as well as the other teachers were starting to see the different results in the class. So one of the things that really came out of that is that we were not expecting our students to really truly describe any of the understanding within our primary curriculum. And all of a sudden we were saying, look at what these children are actually able to say. We had the most amazing generalizations coming from the children, and the teachers were just, I mean, I wouldn't say they were wild, but it was just each time, similar to what you were describing, each time they had one of these lessons, they would come to me and say, oh, you cannot believe what's just happened. Can I share with you? And I've never seen so much enthusiasm within the teachers and therefore within the students. Now, so last year I shifted to another school here in the United Arab Emirates, and I'm in a PYP school, and we are having to combine actually the English curriculum with the PYP. And so when I first arrived, I really very much started looking at, okay, so how is the conceptual thinking happening within our classrooms, within the PYP setting? And I started to realize that nobody was really asking conceptual questions. They were very good at asking factual questions. And of course, the teachers did their best, and they really tried to make it as inquiry-based as possible. But you could feel again that the teachers were not secure in actually developing that conceptual thinking, and they didn't know where to start. So what I have done this year is very slowly talking through different ways of looking at the curriculum and different ways of planning the curriculum, using some of the strategies that I learned in my course, specifically focusing on, well, what are the concepts and how are you getting that into this curriculum? I have done some training with them on the differences between factual questions, conceptual questions, and they are really starting to pick that up. And I think it's fantastic when I see them trying, and actually, instead of using the English I can statements, that they are now trying to get a guiding question that is a little bit more conceptual. Sometimes it is allowed to be factual because that's where the start is. And so for me, the plan is very much to use the beginning of next school year to really spend 2 days doing the official training with a new team, because a lot of staff members are leaving, but to really start saying, this is how we are going to approach our PYP curriculum.
And I think I love what you're saying there about that learning journey for the teacher, but for the professional development that kind of doesn't necessarily start with a full workshop. You start by introducing just a staff meeting around questioning. And I know that that's a lot of people who've done the Institute training. Yes, they'll do the 2-day workshop with their staff at some point, but it doesn't have to be a 2-day workshop. Once you understand it, you can start with a staff meeting. Or actually, for me, when I first had done the training, it wasn't even leading staff meetings. It was just the way I was rethinking planning meetings and what we were doing in those collaborative planning sessions. Fantastic. Thanks, Juliet. It's been amazing to watch that journey with Ish as you've kind of gone through. I'm still connected with a lot of the teachers at Ish. I just last week finished that 4th group of teachers who have just finished the 8-week course, and it's been really, really amazing to hear the stories from people now who have actually, in a way, been teaching concept-based for a while because other people in their team have been planning with them in that way. So it's great to see the transformations that are happening there. Thank you. And Erin, tell me a little bit more about your what you're seeing at UWC, because you've been on that journey. Well, maybe not you personally, but UWC has been on that journey for 10 years. I know.
10 years, yes.
Yeah, I know. One year they sent 5 teachers to the Institute in 1 year. And I know that you're talking about another group of teachers doing it next year. You had someone last year, you've done it, Carla, who's here. So I think probably UWC is one of the schools that's had such a large number of certified trainers who either have been trained while they're working at UWC or they actively recruit. Like I know a big part of you getting your job at UWC was because you were a certified trainer, and Carla said to me, hey, we're looking for someone who's a certified trainer for this role. So tell us a bit about where you're at and how that's transformed your school.
Yeah, it has been quite a journey, and I feel, again, like always in awe coming in, like knowing concept-based, but just seeing how the school has taken this road, committed to it. It's part of the foundational documents that support the learning program. So it is deeply entrenched in the school. But I think one of the first parts to the journey that, from what I understand, so again, if somebody finds a source outside of me and it's slightly different, don't mark me. But the idea being that they slowly started to articulate a written curriculum that was concept-based. And so they slowly did it by doing different disciplines, and it took about 6 to 8 years to have a written curriculum for all the subject areas. The school currently has K1 through 8th grade that is bespoke concept-based curriculum. We have a 9-10 program that currently was following IGCSE. This year, we have developed a 9-10 program that is a UWC program. So I have helped to write 40 courses.
Wow, that's amazing.
All concept-based. Which is crazy, but exciting. And part of that is because the community is saying we need this. And so it's been talked about for many years. I came into, we are doing this, we need to action it over the next several years. And next year, the program is a go-ahead on both campuses. We have 50% enrollment in this program, which is fantastic that we had that kind of community support. We weren't expecting that. We didn't have a number in mind, but to hear 50% of a grade that wanted to enroll and try this is just, it shows that the K-8 program has really been entrenched at the school. But I think when we talk about the more like practical piece of the day-to-day journey that the teachers have been on, I think some of the things that have drastically changed over even the last several years is we've been better about being inquiry, action based and taking the CBCI material and putting them together. I think it's this idea that we're continuing to transition from just writing learning goals to flipping that into those factual, conceptual, and provocative questions, that is what is driving the learning, that it's more inductive than deductive, that there's guided and structured inquiry opportunities, having a balance of those types of inquiry. And I think that language has become very common in planning. I think that, we always have teams across the spectrum, but I also think that if you go into a classroom, the difference is that agency piece, that you do hear students walking away and saying their own big understandings, their big ideas are being shared, that it's not coming from the teacher. They're not, confirming that this was, a factual statement or a conceptual statement. Like, they are discovering this. They are the ones that are sharing those. And those tend to be more powerful than what we've even attempted to write in our articulated curriculum.
Yes,
Which
so often that's the case, that students' understanding are way better than ours.
Yes, exactly. And so that's so impressive that it's not coming from us, it's coming from them. And so just that agency that we've seen grown has been a huge transformation. And so what I think is powerful about a concept-based curriculum is that we've written it, and it doesn't matter the case studies, the units that we want to switch in or out, because it is written with that concept. The conceptual understandings up front are so universal that it doesn't matter that context that we want to switch it with. So there's a recent social issue that's come up that we want to switch in. Teachers can do that, and they don't need to go back to the process. Okay, I've got to switch and rewrite this whole curriculum. And we're working across 2 campuses. So we don't want to have teams that have to feel like they have to have the same units when maybe their contexts are slightly different. So I think that speaks to the power and the testament of why this curriculum works. And it still gives that agency to teachers to have that ability to plan themselves based on being culturally responsive or needing to give students opportunity for agency to pick their own case studies. This lends itself to it.
I appreciate that acknowledgement that it's been a 10-year journey and that you've come in a partway along that journey. But I think that's really important for teachers, for school leaders, probably more importantly, to hear that this is a journey. And we talk about all the time being lifelong learners, but as schools, we also need to see ourselves continually on that journey. And sometimes we have this kind of innovation overload going on in schools, where we're always kind of looking for what's the next new thing. But in order to truly embed anything, whether it's concept-based learning or something else, to actually take the time to really embed it in who you are as a school and make it so that it's so strong within your school that a change in leadership isn't going to mean, throw the baby out with the bathwater and we start again with whatever that school leader wants to bring in. Like, I truly appreciate that. In a lot of leadership positions at UWC, you're actively looking for people, as you have that, normal changeover of staff, you're actively looking for people who can come in and continue to strengthen what you've built as a school. And that it's not going to be someone who comes in and is just bringing in, whatever they've done at their school. You have an identity as being who we are as a concept-based school, and it is a part of all that we do. And I think that's a real strength to what you've developed and what you'll continue to develop. And it sounds like, Juliet and Rian, that's also something that at your schools you're trying to really work to establish as being not just something you're doing or a workshop you've done, it's a part of your identity. Because a part of kind of the reason that we have the Trainer Certification Institute is to go beyond just having these 2-day workshops or these 6-week online workshops, to actually recognize that we want to have leaders in schools who can, just as Rian said, walk into the classroom and say, I understand this deeply and let me help you do this. Let's do this together, and have that in-house leadership, which is so important. So I'll kind of put this question to the group, and whoever wants to can jump in and answer it. We can have a bit of a discussion on it, but you've all alluded to partly that journey. What does it take? What's the long-term commitment to this approach, and what are the challenges that come up in this transformation? How do we overcome them?
Well, I think that the commitment is really starts with the logistics of creating time for teachers to be together in the same room and to have that time to talk to each other and plan together. you know, at the beginning, this is very daunting. The planning of a unit and then the planning of the lessons can be very daunting for teachers. And they feel like, oh, I have to do all of this and teach my lessons and grade, you know, all the assessments and report and meet parents. And so the list seems to be very, very heavy. So creating that time where they can actually do this kind of work is really important. But also the consistency in leadership, you know, the consistency of sending that message out on a regular basis. We are doing this. There is no way around it. You know, there is times when I would say, oh, this is great. We've accomplished so much, but we need to move on to the next level. We need to make that leap, because sometimes, you know, it's like everybody plateaus and it's almost like a step curve, and you just want them to take up that jump so that the unit plan looks stronger and the concepts are well planned across disciplines. And so, you know, it's sometimes it is just consistency in pushing the teachers. We are doing this. We have no choice. You know, sometimes I would say, we really don't have a choice. You're an MYP school. I mean, I'm sorry, but this is happening and you cannot continue going back to your traditional approach. The bigger challenge is really writing those unit plans and then actually translating them into the classroom, because, you know, I see this, and I was talking to Angela yesterday, and we were talking about how we have these beautiful unit planners, and then teachers go back to the classroom and they immediately just revert back to what they normally do in terms of content. And so I think those are, you know, these are the challenges. And the last one is really how you market all of this, how you package all of this. If you come into a group of teachers, and I think everybody would probably agree and say, oh, you know, everything you've been doing is just not really gonna, you know, it's not cutting it. And so we're gonna start over. And I'm starting this training from scratch. And I loved what Julia said, you know, you don't have to deliver the whole workshop. And that's what I did. I was kind of like, oh, let's look at your questions. Let's look at your statement of inquiry. How do you start your lesson? What if you don't give them the statement of inquiry at the beginning of the unit plan? You know, and I work within the framework of the MYP, but try to make sense with the teachers of how they can do it. And I've always said to them, you've done a lot of work. This is, you know, a school that's 150 years old, and it has a long history. And you are here because of all the generations before you. And now it's time to leave your mark so that other generations can come after you. And so I think the idea that you're accumulating on their already established experience eases teachers' anxiety of, I'm getting to learn something brand new 13, 14 years into teaching, and I have to reimagine everything that I've been doing. So I think that's it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of teachers are relieved to know with concept-based that knowledge and skills are still the foundation for learning and for understanding concepts and conceptual relationships. It's not about throwing all that away and just thinking about concepts. All of the work that they've been doing around that knowledge and skills, and a lot of teachers are really well versed in concepts, and it's just about bringing it together and giving it a framework. So exactly. I really appreciate what you said too about giving them time for planning, because recognizing that this unit planning does take time, I think is really important for school leaders, and figuring out how do we create time for teachers to invest in unit planning is so important. Yeah, what else? What are some of the other challenges or ways forward through this?
Yeah, I'm happy to contribute to that. I really liked what was said already. One of the discussions I've had, for instance, with my executive principal was to say, can I approach my professional development in a different way? Can I, for instance, buy a book for every teacher, such as the concept-based inquiry and action? And the reason I want to go back to that particular book is because it is practical. Using that in my professional development sessions, just like Rachel did actually in her training, and take them through the different stages and just indeed say, try one, give it a shot, why not? How can you adapt it for our non-native English speakers, which is about 100% in my school? And so how are we going to link the development of language with the particular activity or with the particular phase that you're trying to develop, and learn from that and have that professional discussion? And I think that's the part that I am really looking forward to, that we have those kinds of professional development discussions with the staff rather than just lecturing, and very much using that inductive approach. And I want to thank Erin for that, because I want to almost get rid of my school is almost solely deductive at the moment. And I really want to start making that shift to the inductive approach, working with the staff on how to do that, how to make that shift. And I think that it is about basically taking them by the hand, working through books, yep, letting them have the time to experiment and say, oh, well, that didn't work. Okay, so what didn't work? Well, what would have worked maybe? And really starting there. And I can only say I'm really looking forward to that. I truly believe that CBCI is the way and is the route to get them to that deeper thinking, to the better expression of their understanding than what we are doing now. So for me, it really is marrying all those best strategies together and just slowly working through what I believe is a longer term professional development for staff, and trying to get as many links as possible with people around the world who are actually doing that. Because I have learned too, even though I can write the generalization quite well now, it still can miss the boat completely when you're sitting on your own. And it is by talking through with lots of people that you get these better statements and therefore your better curriculum. And I think the challenges are out there, but boy, are they exciting. And I really believe that this is the right moment for all the schools to shift and actually start pushing for a change. I mean, the pandemic is still there, but it's time that we take the bull by the horns and start making these changes. And I really believe that this is also a moment where CBCI can really start making an impact in the rest of the world.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it too, Juliet. Very excited about what it means. I'm excited about what it means for your school. And I also really appreciate what you're saying about having that collaborative group to go back to. I still do it sometimes when I'm writing a generalization. I'm like, no, that's not quite it. I'll send Tiffany or Carla or anyone just an email and go, I'm working on this. It's not quite right. Help me. And 5 minutes later, I'll get a response. But that's it. Thanks. I spent 10 minutes thinking about that. And that's what I was looking for. So I think that's been huge for me too, to just have that network. It's amazing. Erin, what do you think? What are some of the challenges? You're in a different place in your school. So, you're in a school that is 10 years down the track. And so what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing now, and how are you working to overcome them sort of 10 years in?
Yeah. I think there's still some resonance with everything that's been shared in the conversation. I wouldn't say as a school that's 10 years in that everything you've just shared is not unique to where I would say we have pockets of it still happening and those frustrations, or we need to figure out how to make this work. And a lot of that nature is because we're in international schools and people move on. And so yes. I think the big question is, how do we constantly shift away from I am a gatekeeper to this knowledge. It's not my knowledge to hold on to. So how do we, and you've alluded to this with some of the interview so far, but I think it's continuing this idea about how do we continue to share this knowledge and continue to let people grow in this. So for us, I think part of it is that because this is part of our culture, it's how we look at our curriculum. We do offer a new teacher training every year on CBTL. It's a one-day workshop, and we basically look at things like, what does a classroom look like? So we model it. We actually do a lesson from start to finish. We walk them through that. Sometimes it's 2 lessons, which I know is a key part of the Institute, and there's a reason it's there. It's because we need to see this and we need to feel that inductive approach so we can do this. So that's something that I think is critical, is that we always model it with them and we walk them through lessons. I think the other piece about that particular workshop is that it's really getting them to understand how we use questions to drive our teaching. And that's really it for that day. If they walk away with those 2 big things, I get what it feels like to be in a classroom and I can write questions. We've already set them on their way to hopefully go back to teams that now have planners that are developed, and they can say, okay, I understand the sequencing of questions now. I understand where the concepts that were originally in the webbing for this unit came from. Like, there's connections out they can go back and make with their team because we've given them that knowledge. So for us, that's a staple. But what comes from that is often then people go back with teams or teams request to work with, whether it's Carla, myself, or any of our academic VPs that are feeling comfortable to do this work. We do unit planning workshops all of the time. So really the key, I think, for us from a leadership point of view is how can we just take 20 minutes, sometimes it's that little, and just say, what's going on? What's the history with this unit? How can we help you? And then we can help to plan together with, a head of department or a team leader to really figure out what's going to be useful in a half-day workshop or a full-day workshop, whatever that is. How can we then offer follow-up afterwards? What is the kind of feedback that they might need from us? Is it a thought partner? Is it that they need someone to come into a classroom and just do a visit and just, verify that the work that they're doing is absolutely on the right track? Like it's just, I think it's that idea that we're open to coaching, we're open to the way to do that. But in order to help people overcome this obstacle of, it seems like CBCI is this mystical thing. It's not. How can we break that down for you? And so I think taking that human approach and connecting people on their journey is also, I think, a big takeaway I've learned in the last 18 months being here.
I want to just zoom in for a moment. You kind of touched on this idea of a half-day workshop or a full-day workshop with a team. So what does that look like, and how do you create the space for it? Because that was also something that I advocated for as a curriculum coordinator, giving teams a half-day or a full-day release of curriculum and not expecting everything to fit into a 1-hour planning meeting. That actually sometimes we need more than an hour. We need more than what we can do while the kids are at their Arabic lesson or at their German lesson or their French lesson or art class or PE or the hour that we have in a staff meeting. So tell me a little bit more about how you create the space for a half-day or full-day workshop for teams.
Yeah, so there's, I would say, a general approach, which I'll talk about, and then I can talk about how we tailor that to different teams. So the general approach is that in a half day, we usually feel like you can do unit webbing, because we already have generalization. So usually it's just unpacking those, doing a unit web, and then being able to jump into writing factual, conceptual, and provocative questions. That's usually a half day for us. And most of the time when we're doing this, it's with teams that don't have a concept-based unit. Lots of them have a more traditional looking planner. Mm-hmm. So that's where a half day usually gets us. If it's a full day, then the second part of that would be to continue on to think about what's the arc of learning? How are we supporting getting to a conceptual understanding, using that factual information, using knowledge and skills to build to that? So what's the sequence we would go through, and how do we go through the inquiry cycle to support that? And so usually when people leave, we really stress this is not a space where you're documenting on a computer. We do a lot of things via sticky notes, whiteboards, chart paper, and it's this idea that it's iterative. We want to invite people to a space. We don't want to be behind a screen. And so where we have that space to facilitate it. Now, I know the world has been unsettled for the last few years. So if you have to do it via screen, okay. But when we are physically together, it's about us doing it together. And it's the idea that you walk away with a place that you could use a unit planner to capture the conversation you've had after that day. And you build your resources after the fact. It doesn't have to be in that room, but you all could go away and execute based on what's there. I think the second part, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to drill down a little bit more into the logistics of that, because how do you make those days happen? Because I know some schools have, substitute teachers and, the flexibility for that. Some don't. How can schools where do we find the time for a half day planning or a full day planning?
Yeah, so we do have a large budget. I will say at our school, it does support this kind of work. Like I'll be very upfront. That was one of my questions when I interviewed, and they do support curriculum development, both written and unit planning. But when it's not possible, like I just worked with a team 2 weeks ago, our PE team, they asked classes, could you move to your morning like planning session and flip to that, in the afternoon? That gave them all the chance to be off timetable, so I could get them for 3 hours, and we spread it out throughout a year. So teams knew it would happen maybe 3 or 4 times, because we knew the scope of the work that we wanted to do was vertical. It was going to be, a massive project. So that's how we creatively did that in that space. We also use a lot of the timetable for DP teachers when students are on study leave, that we do a lot of curriculum development projects or unit planning during that window as well, when they have a condensed timetable. So we get a little bit creative with exams are going on. How can we pull teachers together and use that time and space to do that? So we just kind of, we get creative where we can,
Yes.
but there is, a larger support network outside of that.
Yeah, and I think either way, like I've been in both situations where we've had a decent substitute budget, and then I've been at schools where even if there is a substitute budget, there's no substitute teachers to spend that on. So it's not even about money. We can't find substitute teachers, but we still did it in those schools. And so we still made it happen. Sometimes we had parents come in and do Christmas activities with kids so that we could get our teachers released. Other times we've had to, like you say, Erin, go really creative and off schedule with our timetable, that they kind of had it crash the curriculum day and the kids did arts all day so that we could get in and plan with teachers. And so I think if we truly value that half day or that full day planning, we will find ways to make it happen. So I don't think it's okay for schools to say we don't have the budget to do that, because if it's something that we value, you'll find a way. So what I'd like to kind of turn to now is thinking about, each of you have done the Trainer Certification Institute. What role has the Erickson and Lanning CBCI Trainer Certification Institute played in helping you grow as a leader who could support others in implementing a concept-based inquiry approach? Julia, maybe we'll start with you this time.
Oh, yeah, thank you for that, because I think it is actually really difficult to describe what the growth has been. And I can certainly say that it was completely unexpected. I mean, I knew that I was going to learn from it, but I feel that I have become a completely different leader, in the sense that I can finally be incredibly secure about the knowledge that I have that has been given through the 1 year training, which I thought was superb. It's the security in my own knowledge. It's the security about how to coach and mentor staff, how to approach when you are running into issues, how to actually work with staff, how to get out of my office, as I said, that has been a really big one for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think it has also allowed me to see much better where the misconceptions are that the staff have. So with going through the process of the planning and having had the luxury of working with so many wonderful staff at ISH, I am far more aware of what their own misconceptions are as teachers. And that has to do with understanding the deductive and the inductive approach. That has to do with the guiding questions. It has to do with the generalizations. It has to do with also being able to say, I don't know the perfect answer to this, but let's try something. Maybe this will help. It is very much, I think it has really sparked a desire again to really go that route and actually be there much more for my staff. And I think it is reflecting back on some of the hours and hours and hours of work that I sit behind a computer that has so little impact on the actual learning. That should be really what schools are about. And as a head of school or a primary principal, I've been for so many years just pushed in a corner where I felt it was all to do with paperwork. So the growth as a leader is not something that I think I just feel much stronger in saying, well, that can wait, or you know what, actually that isn't really important at all.
Yeah.
Why are we discussing this?
Yes.
Can we just move on? Because quite frankly, you're not getting it, and this is what the point is. So I think I've just become sharper and more aware of where time is wasted and where I feel I can make a difference. And maybe it has also really sparked the idea that, yeah, you know, paperwork isn't my favorite part of the job. And so maybe mentoring and coaching and training is much more. I think we as teachers, we're all teachers. That is really where our heart is. And so I think the growth as a leader has been much more in those different areas. But it is with a huge smile on my face that I can say, I am so glad that I've been able to make that shift and to see that I need to make that shift. And I think that really comes from working with the amazing group of people where we've had all these professional conversations with on a Saturday. They became my favorite 2 hours of the week during the pandemic. It kept me focused. And it really got me through this pandemic. And I think that's very much the enthusiasm that the group had, that really comes now also into the school. So, yeah.
I heard you say before, Juliet, that at the beginning, you know, starting the Institute, you were kind of worried about what it would mean to spend a year of weekends showing up every weekend to do some of this work, and then when you got to the end of the year you were like, oh no, it's coming to an end, I'm not going to have that every week. And since then you've joined the collaborative, so you're back on to these regular calls and discussions. And
for me also, and Rachel, that was one of the things you said, the reason I've joined the collaborative is indeed that I really recognize that for myself I needed that connection with these people again. Being the only school in the academy that does PYP, I really feel that I need the connection with like-minded people so that I can be the best leader for the school that I am supposed to lead. And so for me, joining the collaborative was the only option to be the leader that I feel I need to be.
That's so powerful. And I love what you said about actually you got into this to be an educator and you found yourself pushing papers and you found your energy and enthusiasm for that leadership again by re-engaging with this work and this passion. So thank you. That's incredibly powerful and inspiring, and you know, brings joy to my heart to feel that, because I can absolutely relate to it. I know that that's where I get my energy too, is in having these discussions and with connecting with all of you. Yeah, and what about you? How has the Trainer Certification Institute helped you to grow as a leader?
Well, Juliet kind of sums it up. I agree with her. I came into this position from a purely academic position. I was in a small liberal arts college that was starting from scratch. So when I first joined, it was 30 students, and when I left, it was 400 students. And so I had the pleasure of designing curricula on that level in my field. And then I came here, and I was suddenly, running after timetables and master schedules and sick teachers and sub teachers, and so I remember feeling like the creativity that I had thought I could bring into this position it wasn't there, and it was not something that I could do. And I work in a context where the principal has a very we still call it the principal position, and a very traditional approach. I mean, even my colleagues who are in similar schools in Palestine are really logistical operational managers to a certain extent. And so I was looking I missed the classroom, and I was looking for that opportunity to create and produce knowledge again. And And the Institute has definitely, got me there. I look at myself now and I think about myself just last year around this time of the year, and the language that I use, how I present to myself to the teachers, and the level of connection that I have with the teachers that I mentor. And I agree with Juliet. I am now like, this is not something I want to talk about. This is just wasting time. And so, and I'm delegating a lot of the work that I used to do myself, because I felt like I had to do to others, because I feel that where, the work the time needs to be spent on mentoring teachers and on the learning, rather than, talking to a parent. Not that that's not important, but talking to a parent who is not going to agree on anything, but just going to waste an hour of your time, of your day. So that has been eye-opening for me on a personal level. It changed my career. I mean, it changed the entire direction. And that was one of the reasons that I decided to leave, because I want to do more of the mentoring and more of the coaching and less of the running of the day-to-day runnings of the school. And since that is not available here, I thought, that I would be looking for something else. And it was just the Institute kind of led to that decision, or gave me at least the courage to say, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. It's time to move on. And so it's been eye-opening. And for me, the connections are the most invaluable part of the Institute, the doors that have opened, and the fact that I could say to other colleagues, you really should take this course. Now I know exactly what they're going to get, and I know that it will probably change the way they see things. So so that, I think for me, it's life-changing, and it's changed our prospects even as a family, because I thought, this is it, we'll stay here, the kids will graduate from RFS, but now even going outside of Palestine and living has become something that's on the table. We didn't have that.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. It does open doors massively. Fantastic. And Erin, what about you? How's it changed you as a leader?
I think in my own personal practice, that's where I was first really challenged with this, that I really wasn't teaching conceptually. I was teaching concepts, but never the relationship between them. So I think that like in my own practice, that in and of itself was like, whoa. And it doesn't take long to get students to make those, connections between those relationships, because you've laid the foundation. But I think for me, like, okay, I could do this, and this is manageable. Like, all of that was huge for me. I think the other piece about the Institute that really I walked away with, and I think I said this earlier, was that I feel confident now to be in a room with any subject area, and I can easily tell if the written curriculum that they've produced is concept based. And to me, I never thought I would get that. I thought I would only gain that by reading books or having spent time in classrooms, and it's not. It's that I actually truly know, okay, this is a conceptual relationship. Yes, this is fine, And so for me, that's huge, going into my job and feeling like, yep, doesn't matter what I'm doing day to day, I can do this. I'm working on 40 courses. There's no time to be studying. I've got to go and get work done.
Yeah, and you don't need to, because now you've got the confidence in the teachers that you can ask the right questions, so that they can be empowered to write their curriculum.
Right. That's right. And so for me, like that in and of itself, I had someone at work ask, oh, we're thinking about sending, several teachers this year. And one of their questions was, is this really something you can gain from the Institute? Or is it that you could just read the book and it's enough? And I'm like, no, it's about the conversations. It's about the doing the lessons and being on that side of it. I think it's about this idea about that you're constantly writing these generalizations. So you get so good at it that you have no other way but to think about it this way. And so for me, those were some of the most valuable pieces I walked away with, was the tools in my toolbox to do the job that I knew I needed to do. And I had no idea I was going to a school that was going to be concept based, but in my own personal practice, in a school that wasn't concept based, I knew I walked away now with a toolkit that would continue, let me grow. And that's really quite powerful for myself as a leader, that I felt that I had I guess, some efficacy over my work and what I was about to be doing.
Mm-hmm. And I think, I mean, both you and Rhiam have touched on it. It also makes the choices that you make about the rest of your career are also driven by the change in yourself. So you said I had no idea about the fact that I would end up, but you have chosen to put yourself there because it aligns with what you believe.
That's right.
And the same with what you're saying, Rhiam, is like, I'm making different choices because I actually have shifted my beliefs about education and my beliefs about what I have to contribute to the world. So, wow, that's powerful. Gives me goosebumps actually to kind of hear that those transformations, because that's what I also experienced. Is my entire career is different as a result of, you know, that shift in thinking.
I also think before I signed up for the Institute, I was in curriculum for about 3 years at that point, full time. And I thought, is my day really going into team planning times and really talking about the pacing of learning? There are so many questions around, where are you today? Where are you today? How can we be at the same point? Here's this resource I made. And I just thought there has to be more to this than that conversation. And I felt like, again, the 2 workshops by Professional Learning really shifted that for me to say, no, there is more to this. There really is. And this is really the heart and soul of what we should be talking about. So I think, you know, now that we're having this conversation, that's really resonating with me.
Mm-hmm. I actually remember at the end of that week in Spain, you came up to me. It was a 5-day workshop that we did in Spain together, the Concept-Based Inquiry and Action workshop, which I haven't done since the pandemic, but that 5-day workshop is one that I also truly love. And I remember you saying to me, this is the first time in years that professional development has actually challenged my thinking. Mm-hmm. I've done other professional development and I've taken away learning from it, but this is the first time since years that I've actually been challenged in terms of what I believe about education. So yeah, I still remember that conversation that we had.
Yeah, and it's very true.
Yeah, I agree. It's the same for me.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's huge. It was the same for me too. You can't unlearn it once you've discovered it. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So to finish, I want to kind of throw out this question: what recommendations would you make to school leaders who are committed to a concept-based approach? What would you kind of recommend as a next step for them, or as something that they need to be thinking about in their school?
Well, take the institute, enroll in the institute. That's one. But no, I think that for me, I would say that making that commitment really, and really digging deep beyond the big buzzwords, and really just doing the work, actual work of planning a unit, of training the teachers, of talking to the teachers, taking the time to talk to the teachers. I think that the more committed you are as a leader, that trickles down to your teachers as well. So for me, it's just, you know, becoming the poster child for CBCI wherever you are in your institution. That, I think, pushes the school forward. And of course, I think advocating for professional development and finding creative ways to make sure that you have that time is necessary as a leader, is something that, you know, you'll continue to advocate. You're always going to have someone who's above you who doesn't see it, who doesn't want to give you the money or the time, who doesn't want to let the kids go home a little early that day, or whatever it is. You know, there will always be someone resistant. I think that I just smile at the resistance, because I think it comes out of not knowing what the magic is. And so I just kind of say, just give me a day, you know, and you'll see. And so I think that just sticking to it is necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fantastic. What about you, Erin?
I would agree with, of course, building up that leadership. You can do it throughout, you know, many years, but that idea about how can this live on through change in your school is really quite big in this international community where we know that people just move on. So just, you know, how will you instill that, I guess, is one of those pieces. And you don't have to have an articulated concept-based curriculum like UWC. You can still follow a national curriculum or IB and still work within that framework. But I think some of the other pieces that I've been challenged with since leaving the Institute and coming to UWC, where we do have a bit more of a legacy, is that there are other ways to continue to grow and change and be nuanced about this. And so I think because there is a network, just trying to get connected with other people to say, you know, I'm doing this unit on inequality. How might you approach this? Or, you know, I've been looking at these case studies, or I found this resource. Do you think it's concept-based? You know, how could we change it to make it concept-based? And just really using that network to help you do this, and have that safe space to kind of play around and explore, would be another piece of advice that I would have. And I am thankful that I have a safety network around me to always run my ideas by, but that's come through trial and error myself of, yep, thought partner would have been really helpful before I tried that. And so I just think, you know, having that community, whether it's within your school or outside, is really great, and just really challenging. How can you keep doing this work?
I love that. Having a thought partner would have been really great before I tried that. That's fantastic. Yep. But you know, the reality is sometimes we do try things still to this day. Sometimes I'll try something and I'll go, didn't land the way that I thought it was. But what I've learned now is I can very quickly tell you why. Whereas before I might have been going, why didn't that work? Whereas now I can be like, oh, the case study, or that question wasn't quite right, because it's given me that structure to think about what will work and what won't work. And now if it doesn't work, I'm like, oh, of course, I should have thought about the fact that they needed a couple more case studies before I asked them to do that. So yeah, I really appreciate that comment. Like, if only I'd had that thought partner to run that by. And sometimes we have them and we just don't get a chance to the time or the space to do it. And so yeah, we're all still on that journey. And Juliet, what about you? Yeah, absolutely. Be risk takers, put it out there.
Yeah, Rachel, for me, it is very much, if you don't know that you don't know, you don't know. And so I would say to anybody who is reluctant to consider something like this, is to indeed do the introduction course like we did as a senior leadership. It's a 6 weeks course. And through that 6 weeks, I mean, anybody can deal with 6 weeks. I mean, the online training is superb, it's great, and you will discover what is missing. Because if you don't know that it was missing, you will not look for it. And so for me, I think it is very much for people who think that they have this really strong curriculum, even if it is IB, but actually having that implemented within your school, this particular course will really open your eyes to what it is and what it isn't doing currently in your school. And I think finding that missing link basically opens the doors to identifying what can you do about that. And I think as a leader, even if you would do that 6 weeks course, you will have a very basic understanding of what is really missing in your schools. And I think once you've done that, you realize, even if you don't, I mean, I myself wanted to be that trainer indeed, even if you don't want to do that, you can actually start identifying people within your school who could actually make the school move forward if you don't have the time for that. And then you give them the most valuable training that they've ever received in their lives. Because like what Erin said, I've been a head of school for over 30 years, and I know what leading a school is, but I really now know better what I can do to shifting and to making the changes to a curriculum, strengthening your curriculum, because I just didn't see what was missing. And like what you said, Rachel, it is about, something isn't right, but you can't put your finger onto it. And with this training, you become much more able to identify this is where it's going wrong. We are not, yes, we are saying we're doing conceptual thinking, but you know what? You're not. And I think that's the part that really is something that it's like looking in the mirror and identifying that, yes, something is missing. So for me, I can only say, make that shift and at least open yourself up for identifying if there's anything that can happen to your school, because believe me, you'll discover something is missing.
Indeed. Well, thank you so much to all of you who've given up a couple of hours now to share your thinking and your learning and your journeys in your school. I really appreciate that. To everybody who's listening to this call, I encourage you to jump into the Facebook group and share your thoughts, your comments, your reflections, your own journeys with concept-based, and also your questions. So what questions do you have for Juliet and Erin and Riam about their journeys? How can we as a group help you in your schools to move forward? We would love to hear from you and to kind of share where you're at and what you're wondering at this point. So thank you, everyone. We will connect again soon.
Thank you.